Everybody, welcome back to AEG's podcast. Today we have my dear friend Richard with the Alberta International Air Show. I'm delighted you're here, Richard.
I'm happy to be here. This is a great opportunity for us.
Thank you, and for us too. You say that, obviously it's got air show in the title, but it's not an air show. What does that mean exactly?
So it's always been designed to be similar to what Stampede is more of an international networking and conference kind of a setup with a rodeo as a backdrop. We started like Stampede did with an air show as a backdrop because that was a part you get launched first and get the logistics of the business to consumer forward facing thing out of the way first. As we build up the momentum and the international attention to say, hey, we're trying to do something big here. It's always been designed to be a conference, B2B networking center, sort of an investment attraction piece for everything attached to aerospace, rather than just an air show, which is your typical barnstormers and pilots do flip flops and have a hot dog and go home. It's a little bit more than that, similar to what Stampede is.
That's awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
what's the reason behind the initiative?
We need to get people here to Alberta. We are very lucky to have a lot of net migration, but we also need to have a lot of net migration with economic diversification. So the net migration has always been about the oil sands and being able to extract petrochemical industry products. So also the associated industries, the millwrights, the laborers, the pipe fitters, and everything else that goes with it. But as we start looking to diversify on top of the existing petrochemical industries, such as artificial intelligence, engineering, those things usually come out of the aerospace industry first. Like anti-lock brakes, for example, came out of the Boeing 747 program, which that was in the 60s. So you take a look at how that all comes together. We need to get that attraction here to let the young folks of the world, and we're talking 15 to 21-year-olds is what really we're looking at, to know that there's an opportunity in Alberta and there's an opportunity to expand. And the same thing for the companies that want to invest here. The number one thing with a bullet that they look for is human capital. I can build machines anywhere, including Tuktoyaktuk, but well, I'm going to find people to run them, and I'm going to find people to distribute, or the engineers to build new stuff, or the millwrights, or the pipe fitter. All those other trades still apply. In fact, we need them more as we diversify. So that's really what we're trying to do: is get attention here, versus having people go on trade missions. Trade missions are cool, but the trade missions bring them here, so then we can finally give them the final sell here in Alberta and say, here's that plot of land near Lethbridge, Calgary, Red Deer, Edmonton, Fort McMurray. Doesn't matter. And invest here, please.
I love it. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great attitude. You and
That's
I
the only.
both love Alberta. We love people
Yep.
paying attention. That's awesome. And are there any other initiatives around the world that are an example very similar to this or?
So there's a few that are, but and sometimes when I say them, people look at me like, boy, do you have high expectations? But I always say, if you don't reach here, this will be great. You got to get at least close to here. Then so there's the Farnborough International Air Show and the Le Bourget Salon d'Aéronautique, which is basically when you see on YouTube all these airplanes doing the normal commercial airplanes doing their aerobatics with those. That's what that is. Now those salons or air shows, they're not air shows either. They're a week-long business-to-business conference. They are the pinnacle. Dubai does one as well, and also the Singapore and Portugal does one in the Iberian Peninsula, and they're really meant to attract people to see what those parts of the world have to offer. So, for example, in Farnborough, they do about 190 billion euros with business to business contract sales, whether it's buying F-35 fighters or Boeing 737s or Airbus 320s. That's the kind of money that goes through these trade fairs, and they're VAT usually tax free within the existing jurisdiction. Of course, they pay tax in their home jurisdictions, but what happens is that the residual from some of those deals, some things do stay behind, such as Rockwell will get a contract for seats or for electronics or for whatever in the new airplanes that are coming up. It's an amazing event. If you have never been to Farnborough, it really is the sort of the pinnacle of what we're trying to do.
Well, the first time I ever heard of it was through you, and then I looked on the internet and thought, oh my goodness, if we could bring this to Alberta, that would be excellent.
That's a 60 plus year program that they put together. And now, of course, the world's changing a lot more rapidly. So we're thinking within the next 10, 15, we should be able to get somewhere close to what Portugal does and what Singapore does. Farnborough is a good stretch. Hopefully we can get anywhere near that. They don't do anything like that really to that level at North America, which makes people bewildered. But it's
Amazing.
it's a big event.
What a great opportunity for Alberta. And if
It is.
anybody can get it done, Richard, you can. That's awesome.
Thank
So
you for the
good.
vote of confidence. I appreciate that.
I love it. I love what you're doing. This is good. And what is STEAM? I'm curious about that. Can you go into that a little bit?
So most people used to call it STEM, and
Oh,
so they added the A. So STEM, science, technology, engineering, and
yeah.
math. The A stands for arts. So
Oh,
there's this newer belief coming through that you still need to have an artistic or an arts brain to be able to imagine what's new. It's just not all numbers. You look at most people that are physicists or even chemists; they're also very much a lover of the arts.
mm,
And music especially, you'll see people that have music going on the back, or whether it's a symphony, a concerto, or heavy metal, whatever you happen to like. But most people get excited by that, so they want to bring that in as part of it to say that not only can we build things, but we have a culture. So for the STEAM event here at Villeneuve, we'll be looking at the engineering, the manufacturing, the things I've just talked about for anybody. But then we're going to have some more, whether it's Indigenous displays and cultural activities there, or some folks in the French Canadian community, or from the recent and unfortunate ton of migrants from the Ukraine that have had to come our way. There's things that we can say, you're not going to come here and just sit in what people think Edmonton and Calgary are, a frozen wasteland in the middle of nowhere. They'll find some very dynamic, very diverse, very forward-thinking cities, and even rural Alberta is very forward-thinking. It's
there it is.
it's not the stereotype that most people want to paint Alberta with.
It's so true. And but that's
Mm-hmm.
a global situation.
That's a
When we
global
listen to a
situation.
small part of what the media has to say with a blanket
Exactly.
brush, this is how things are. Well, we're going
They,
down the
they,
wrong
they
path.
find one person in the middle of nowhere and say that's Alberta. It's like, no.
Yeah, no, that's true. They need to come and discover it, and this is a great
Yeah,
way to do that.
that's the
What
best
does
way to
this
do it. Yep.
initiative need to be successful? What are some of the things that you're looking to do?
The biggest thing it needs is to get the, I don't want to say backing, but to get people more behind it, because it's really easy to sit back and say it's just an air show. I'm going to come have my hot dog and go home. We are very much a KPI, or key performance indicator, metrics based organization. That's kind of what differs ourselves from most air shows. Most air shows, and they're great fun. Don't get me wrong. But people get together, they want to see planes fly, they do a weekend and they go have a couple hot dogs and go home. This one here is promising anybody that comes along. What do you want to see? What are your goals? How can we align to what your corporate objectives are, to what your government objectives are? So, for example, for jobs, economy, and northern development, that's why they're heavily behind the STEAM program, because that's trying to get the new talent, the human capital here, to actually make things outside of aerospace and around transportation logistics work. That's kind of what we really need our folks to understand, that this is a long term. It's not just a sponsorship for a weekend. The word sponsorship, in fact, is kind of a dirty word. In the 80s and 90s, somebody liked a warbird, they'd come and give $50,000 and say, I just want to see planes fly. Now companies have a marketing and communications arm that goes deep into what is this, what's in this for me, what do we actually get out of this. And that's what we're trying to tell anybody who wants to come on board, is that we want to align so that you get something, you get a return on your investment. We have to eat our own dog food if we're trying to say we want investors to come to Alberta, invest in the province as a whole. We have to be investor focused as well. So that's
Mm,
literally what we need people to look at this as an investment, a shared opportunity, shared benefit. And also people look at that and say, well, what does that mean? We get a percentage of ticket revenue? No, your shared benefit comes to the fact that you've now made this big network of I don't know how many people. You're going to get a $3, 5, $7 million deal this year. Maybe it's $100 million deal the next. In the COVID year of 2021, I believe it was $4 million worth of business deals were done. And that's in a COVID year, in a rush
wow,
show that we put on 23 days with really
wow.
no programming. And there was three different contracts that were signed for around 3.5 to $4 million.
Hmm.
What, not bad for coming out of 23 days of, oh, are we not, are we okay, we
Yeah,
are okay, go.
I've been under the gun like that. It's not fun.
Yes.
But man, that's huge success in a short time.
It was a fun run. Let's put it that way. We still had our issues. We had more friends than we thought show up. So we're like, geez, okay,
Nice.
only few of you bought tickets, and everybody wanted to come day of. But of course, best summer ever. No one really knew whether it was going to go forward or not. So
I
surprise.
know. Surprise. Well done. That's awesome, Richard. Excellent. And where and when does it happen?
So we're going to have the air show this year, the August long weekend, 4th, 5th, and 6th. We're normally the third weekend in August, but our friends in the Royal Canadian Air Force wanted to head to Newfoundland and Gander and places like that on our normal slots. So we moved up to accommodate their piece. The conference will be the 2nd and 3rd of August, the conference trade show kind of thing. And that'll be at the International Airport here in Edmonton. And then we'll return back to our normal schedule, 2024 onwards.
Excellent. Well, that's right around the corner. How exciting. I look forward to being there.
Oh, yeah. We look forward to having you. We've got the Pacific Northwest Aerospace Alliance out of Seattle coming as well, so they're a partner. So this
Mm,
starts to get even more and more international. They want to see what the aerospace cluster is here. They want to see what the investors are that here. So that I just appeal to your members to look to come on board and
mm,
start making this international network through not only the Pacific Northwest because we're part of the Pacific Northwest economic region,
mhm.
but also they may want to use and abuse us in a nice way to get more investment throughout the United States and Canada. We are one big fortress North America, so let's not forget that.
That's right. What a great opportunity.
It
Thank you
is.
so much.
You're welcome.
And any support from government, any levels in government?
So, like I mentioned earlier, we do have jobs economy and northern development.
Right.
They're in behind on the career fair and STEM fair, which is really awesome. We're negotiating with a few other folks in Prairies Canada, government Canada. We're looking at that piece. Everything kind of has to come into line with matching funding and things of that nature. But it's not the first time that the province has been supportive. The province has actually been very supportive throughout all the years we've been here. We're trying to work on the regional support because sometimes the Edmonton versus Calgary thing gets in the way, and we're trying to tell people, in an international standpoint, nobody cares. It's Alberta. They
No,
really don't care about our little,
no,
Oilers versus Flames thing. It just
no.
doesn't matter. It's dollars and cents that count. So we're
Right.
still working through some of that part, but the county of Sturgeon, sorry, has been spectacularly supportive the entire time, and we've had a lot of support from other areas of the local community. So it's good. But
Mhm.
the thing to go from just an air show to an international investment fair is an exponential leap in
Sure.
effort.
Sure it is. Excellent. And why this particular airport?
Villeneuve is an airport that not only is central, but when you take a look at it, it will never have scheduled service. And
Oh,
that's what's hurting something like Farnborough, and that's what's hurting some of the other shows is that they may have scheduled service or encroachment of neighborhoods. You really can't be doing these aerobatic stunts over top of someone's house just in case something goes wrong. So you'll notice that some of the bigger shows they're getting encroachment. Our friends at Reno, at the Reno Air Races, were one of our partners. They are having their last show next year, and the key reason is that development is coming around the airport. So there's some issues and concerns. We won't have that problem. We have wheat roots and worms, but we're only 5 to 7 minutes outside of Edmonton, which makes it
love it.
easy. And then as other airfields, like for example, the proposed Haviland Field in Calgary come into fruition or not, there's a possibility to do 1 year in Edmonton, do 1 year in Calgary. But this airport really being central, close to a major market, 16,000 room nights, commercial service only 20 minutes down the road. We're equally offensive to everybody in the world, is what we say, because it's 4,000 miles of a flight, whether it's Hong Kong or whether it's Dubai.
Yeah.
You're getting your private jet or private plane or whatever commercial, and you're flying here. So
Right.
nobody has home field advantage. We are lucky with the Edmonton Airports Authority that we can extend the free trade zone, so we can
Great.
offer those other pieces. So it was a very strategic look. We looked throughout the province and also North America, and there's about 4 airfields you could do this, and this one really did come on top basically because of some very strategic things, and the biggest one being we can use the airport for a week, and we can work with the training folks, work with the other folks, but we're not ever harming Air Canada or United for bringing flights in, and we're not flying over houses.
I love it. So
Mm-hmm.
that was my next question is why Alberta? What was the strategic reason? But I guess you've already
Well,
been given.
there's more to it than just that piece. If you look at a globe, especially when you look at Edmonton and Calgary, we're on the lee side of the Rocky Mountains, which makes the transportation corridor networks, that stuff that MLA and Minister Dreeshen are working on right now with MLA Getson and Smith. They're really pushing the whole economic corridors piece. And that, if you want to start looking at opening up more routes to Tidewater, well, you're going to come from through the mountains on a pass. You're going to hit the prairies eventually, whether it's from Juneau or Churchill or Prince Rupert, and everything kind of runs right into Edmonton and also runs into Calgary. And then, of course, we have the Panamex or the Canamex highway network that can get you pretty much anywhere in North America. So when you fly over top of us, if you look up at any one time, especially in Edmonton, there's tons of cargo aircraft, like 3 or 4 in a row, going from Anchorage into Chicago or Louisville or the major distribution hubs in the States. So it actually is already a distribution hub basically on its geographic location. We were called the gateway to the north, not because it was a nice moniker, but it literally was a geographic and a navigable beacon We're the
Hmm.
first city you see coming from anywhere up north by about 200 miles. We're the first major piece of civilization, and also the last one you see when you go up go the other way. So it's we're trying to really take the advantage of the outpost and turn it into something where people find a friendly country, a super friendly province, super friendly tax benefits within the province. Where they don't tax you to death here in Alberta, and then basically you're equidistant everywhere. You can basically cross dock, value add manufacture. You've got rail lines, both major rail companies, all major cargo companies. They're all here. So why not?
Why not? I love it. Good reasons. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, Alberta.
It's
Awesome.
Alberta. It's Alberta. It's first of the alphabet. Let's go.
That's right. Are there any demographic challenges that you would have to face?
Well, the biggest one for us is that we're trying to make sure this people understand it's a really a youth focused thing. Like that, that's one of the biggest reasons we're pulling away from the word air show is that people get visions of World War II and warbirds and grandpa going, I like airplanes. Well, that's great, and we do have a portion of that. But the bigger thing is that the key demographic being youth, how do you energize them? They look at things completely differently
Mm,
than the folks in the 50s and 60s did. Our parents specifically. You take a look at them; they're just joystick, rudder, the whole nine yards. These kids, they play on PlayStation or Microsoft Flight Simulator on the Xbox. They're using a D-pad, like basically what an arcade controller. And the technology has changed so much that you can now fly a fighter jet with a D-pad because there's no cables attached to anything. It's all fly-by-wire. So you literally could have a PlayStation D-pad
well,
and fly a fighter jet. And that's what people are like. So when these kids show up and they see flight training schools that have old steam gauges and stick and rudder, they look at it and go, cute, but I have this litmus test where I take a look at people when they watch a display, and I have what I call this. And the second they're doing this is the second they're not engaged because they're not looking at the display. They're talking to their friends. They're Snapchatting. They're going back to what they're doing. So when you take a look at the warbirds, as cool as they are, to a 15-year-old, they burn lead. They're ancient. They're full of something called unobtainium, so they'll never fly one. And what
mm,
these kids want to see is something they're going to build, fly,
for
do
sure.
whatever. So
Yeah,
when that young lady's looking to be an engineer, she's not looking at rebuilding the Corsair. She's looking at building the next supersonic airliner
that's right.
or the next drone.
That's right.
That's what they're really looking at here. So it's a big demographic shift, not only in the culture of the air show industry,
Hmm.
but in the culture of what folks think is attracting folks to STEM. And it isn't grandpa's
Yeah,
technology.
it
Like
isn't.
like we are like we don't a lot of folks don't even want to look at it anymore because it's a nice place to go, but it's not just a chapter in history. It's
Hmm.
not the full technical manual. Like we open the show with the Boeing 737 normally every year because that's a piece of technology that some of these kids will fly, build, drive, rebuild, maintain, go on for a wedding, go on for a funeral, their first job. That aircraft symbolizes where they're at, and then the future piece. So, doing a overflight with it's like doing an overflight with an old World War I biplane that's full of fabric. Cute, but nobody cares.
Right.
It's
Awesome.
and I'm not being rude. It's just
Not at all, no.
it's 2023.
It sure is 2023, and I like it.
Mm-hmm, me
That's
too.
awesome.
We live in probably the most prosperous time ever in humanity. So
Also
people
exciting.
need to accept that.
Agreed. And roll with it. How
We'll
fun.
roll with it. It is fun.
What's the 50% of the 10%? What is that?
I was hoping you'd ask that question. Now, yeah, I throw that line out to everybody. So, when you look at Canada as a population, most people know that Toronto's the biggest city. But most people don't know is that about 75% of Canada lives below the 49th parallel. That
Mm,
includes city like St. John's, Newfoundland, which is at I think 47.5, almost 48 degrees north. So we're at 53 degrees, which is a significant jump. The rest of Canada's population lives within about 100 miles, or pretty much along the Trans-Canada Highway of the U.S. border. So that's they say between 90 and 95. I use it for easy numbers, 90. So
mm,
when you add up the rest of the population, Edmonton being at 53 degrees north and 1.5 million people is 50% of the remaining 10% of the population of Canada,
mm.
with about 90% of the land all around us. Like you look at 75% of Canada's population, well, 55%, forgive me, is on about 1% of our land mass.
Hmm.
between Windsor and Montreal. That's really where, quote unquote, everybody is. So
Hmm.
those that argue that Toronto isn't the center of the universe haven't really picked up a map lately. But
Right.
but but the biggest thing is that, and a young lady from Lockheed said this probably the best. She goes, Richard, we don't ignore you. We just don't care to ignore you because ignoring you takes effort,
Right.
because you don't have the population, you don't have the push, you don't have like we don't we haven't as a city and as a province really pushed hard. We like to say, hey, we want in, but now we have initiatives like this that say, okay, now let's really push hard and show that we want in, and people kind of look and go, but we're here in Edmonton. That
Hmm.
should be looked at as a strength.
For
We have all
sure.
this available land and all these things to, but it's going to take a lot. When I say that, it's going to take a lot of effort to get folks to stop ignoring us, because ignoring is easy. We want to now suddenly say, hey, there's something there. Let's go take a look. And the snowball's pretty quick. Once people,
Sure.
when I get people here, I can sell them. It's not hard.
I
Like
get that.
selling the Rocky Mountains is not a hard thing.
It's
One of my compatriots calls Alberta the best backyard in the world. You can go from desert to, all the way up to snow within one province.
true.
We're huge, and
Yeah.
we're diverse, and we've got some great opportunities, but we got to get them here first. So we got to take advantage of the fact we're 50% of the 10%, and help the rest of Canada, which is, I mean, we're even talking Churchill, the Northwest Territories, everybody become that nexus for developing the rest of Canada, so that people know that there's more than the stereotypical flying hockey pucks and polar bears.
Yeah, that's right. We have those too, but we
I have
also have
those
many
too.
other things. Yeah.
The polar bears are pretty quick, especially when they give a hockey stick, but that's another story. They drink a Coke and play hockey. Boy, they're scary. Sorry.
Thanks, Richard. How can our AG members help? What are some ideas?
The biggest thing is you can get a hold of us through info at abairshow.com. There's also the website. We're transitioning the name to something called Valero, which is, we're playing on the word Villeneuve, which is New Village. So we're calling it the New Village of Aerospace, but Valero sounds like, the old Ricardo Montalban commercial, Rich
Yes.
Corinthian letter for Cordoba. So we're
Right.
looking for that cute little one word that gets on there. But really, your members, if they really want to expand their network, then come on board and to use us and abuse us in the proper way to help us build our network, so they build your network to actually get more business here, because that's how business works. Like, we can talk all we want about glossy brochures, but until you get people there and shaking hands, like this Zoom and everything else is a wonderful tool, but shaking a hand is not going to go away. Looking
No.
into someone's eye is not going to go away. Like, even me, as I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the camera properly and not breaking the fourth wall too much, it's not the same as if you and I were sitting in a room and actually
No.
doing this interview. Get the eye contact and the engagement's even better. But
True.
that can't happen all the time. So Grant, we're taking advantage of this, but your members can really, like, don't be afraid to come to Edmonton. Don't be
Yeah.
afraid. Don't be afraid to, like. Don't be afraid to bring people from Red Deer or even Rocky Mountain House or Fort McMurray or Hines Creek.
Hmm.
There's all these places like Lacrete's got some amazing logistics capability and some amazing industry that's going on up in that part of the world that no one knows about. No one knows is going on
Hmm.
in Grand Cache and Grand Prairie. Come on
Hmm.
down and show it off, and then that's what really brings the people to invest, is when they see that there's an actual opportunity here. So use us and abuse us.
That's awesome. I have one more question, Richard. I'm
Sure.
wondering, you've mentioned a few times in our previous conversations that it could be another Calgary Stampede. What does that mean to you?
So literally, again, when you look at the Calgary Stampede piece, it's a $400 million impact to the provincial economy, and most people who think Calgary Stampede is the fair and the rodeo haven't been to the Calgary Stampede. That's what I keep on saying. When you take a look at how much that event though sucks out of the local event planners, tents, infrastructure of that nature, and the Calgary Stampede Parade, which is constantly broadcast. It's always around. You go around the world, the recognition of the Calgary Stampede. What comes out of that is the willingness to try and the willingness to drive and the willingness to do new things. It's this frontier spirit that shows up there, which is very similar when you blaze a trail in aerospace. So we're trying to take advantage of the energy. Forgive me for mimicking Calgary slogan, but we're taking advantage of the new energy, and we're trying to do it on a provincial level to say, you know what, there is a whole province here. Yeah, our GDP is about half of Dallas currently, but we're not small either, and we're not just the Texas of the North. I lived in Houston. Don't get me wrong. I like my friends in Texas. They're great folks, but we're more than the Alberta of the North. We're Texas. We're more like a Colorado, in many ways, which basically says, with a major event in July and August, we could actually own the summer calendar of major conventions
Hmm.
in the Pacific Northwest region, which helps everybody in the long run, and also allows people to, especially like you said, with our lack of the Patriot Act and things like that, allows people to come on board and have fun. So when you look at the Calgary Stampede, it is a great model. I have to take my hats off to the Stampede Association over the 120 some odd years it's been around. They've really worked it from what was originally a New York City man's version of a rodeo to a premier business networking event with something as simple as being able to put on a pair of cowboy boots, a cowboy hat, and go to a pancake breakfast. All you have to do is put on a set of coveralls, call it a flight suit, put on a pair of sunglasses, and off you go. It's the same type of dress up. It's the same type of fun that you can have and engage folks and show everybody the energy of Alberta.
That's awesome. I am so glad that you're doing this, Richard.
We're
Hats off
trying.
to you. Thank you for your
Yeah,
service. And
you're
thank
welcome.
you for joining me today. I appreciate this.
Oh,
We
it's
look
been an
forward to
absolute pleasure.
sharing it.
Okay,
Thanks so much, Richard. Everyone, that
you're
was
welcome.
Richard. And of course, check out this really cool air show conference in August. I know I'm going to be there and I look forward to it. Thanks again for joining us on AEG's podcast.